welcome to the CNIC's first webinar of 2026. My name is Evan Cameron, and I'm the Manager of Public Affairs and Communications at the CNIC. We're really glad that you've joined us this morning for what I think will be a very fascinating conversation highlighting the role of automation and technology in Canada's isotope supply chain. As you are no doubt aware, technology is playing an increasingly important role across many industries, and our isotope supply chain is no different. While there are many benefits to this progress, such as risk reduction and expanding capacity, there's also a certain degree of uncertainty regarding some of the long-term implications of these advancements. We'll dive into these benefits and the uncertainty throughout today's discussion with our distinguished panelists. I will introduce you to the panelists in a moment, but first, I want to remind all those of you who are attending that we'll be using Microsoft Teams Q&A function throughout the event. You can submit your questions by clicking the button in the top left corner of your screen there, and we'll be sure to address it during the Q&A period. If you submit your questions into the Microsoft Teams chat, we may miss them, so make sure you use the Q&A function. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to our very distinguished panelists, who we're very grateful have joined us today. Majid Afana is the Global Director of Nuclear Sales and Business Development at ATS Industrial Automation, and a senior leader in Canada's energy and nuclear sectors, with over 13 years of experience delivering complex, high-value projects. With a strong foundation in mechanical engineering, business development, and operations, Majid helps customers execute growth strategies and develop tailored automation solutions across the nuclear life cycle, driving innovation and long-term value. Alex Sakuda is the Director of Isotopes and Radiopharma at Promation, bringing 30 years of nuclear experience and a decade in radiopharmaceuticals to deliver innovative, customer-focused solutions. He leads Promation's efforts to meet urgent industry needs for automated process equipment, aseptic isolators, hot cells, and robotics that are required for commercial-scale radiopharmaceutical production. Sheila Webb was named Chief Digital Officer at Mirion in October 2023. Prior to entering the role, Sheila served as Chief Technology Officer from July 2019. Prior to the Canberra acquisition, she served as Vice President of Engineering for Canberra Industries, and throughout the past 23 years, she has held a variety of management positions within Canberra in product management, product development, and services. And finally, certainly last but not least, Chantal Hurst is the Senior Manager of Technical Services at Sage Engineering. With over a decade of experience supporting clients in regulated industries to develop and implement solutions for complex manufacturing and packaging challenges. For the past 4 years, she has worked closely with radiopharmaceutical clients with a particular focus on drug product packaging and automation. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for joining us. I'm going to take a sip of water. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for joining us. And with that, let's jump into our discussion. I'll throw the first question over to Majid. You are here today representing an organization that is primarily focused on providing automation solutions, and I suspect that the nuclear and isotope supply chain is an expanding focus of your business as the radiopharmaceutical market expands and we experience this kind of nuclear renaissance. Could you kick things off by giving us a bit of an overview of how ATS supports clients in the nuclear and isotope supply chain?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for having me, Evan. I look forward to the discussion with yourself and my fellow panelists. So ATS is a global leader in automation. We're a systems integrator. We design and build, again, automated solutions. And, the question on the nuclear and isotope, it's really two of our business segments. So we operate, I'm in the nuclear segment of ATS, and our focus is on supporting the complete life cycle of a nuclear facility. So we've got projects that stem from supporting the new builds here in Ontario and global. We support the life extension programs and have been over the last 15 years, both domestic and international, which is obviously key in enabling the isotope sector that we have in Ontario. So supporting Bruce, Darlington, and now very much in the planning phases for Pickering refurbishment. We also get involved with the decommissioning and hot cell and facilities, nuclear facilities and whatnot. Another arm of ATS is Commissure. So Commissure, obviously, this year they're celebrating their 50 years. They've seen tremendous growth across the global across the globe. They are a leader in containment systems for the pharmaceutical, radiopharmaceutical, and the advanced therapy medical products. Over half of Commature's sales right now come from the radiopharma equipment market. So they obviously specialize in shielding systems that are used in production, management, distribution of radiopharmaceuticals for the diagnosis and treatment of various diseases. So Commsure supports their clients across the entire nuclear and isotope supply chain as well. So they produce and deliver isotope production automation. They produce shielded cells, isolators, production lines for synthesis and dispensing. They even have hospital radiopharmacy solutions and workflow software. They've got advanced containment and aseptic systems. They've got integrated automation, which is what we bring between the ATS Life Sciences division and Commature's, that integrated platform, the digital platform that Commature's products build on. So I think that sort of puts Commature in a unique position in terms of being able to provide that end-to-end solutions, supplying the radiopharma industry from target processing all the way to patient dose administration.
Thanks so much, Majid. Alex, I'll come to you with the same question. Can you give us a bit of an overview of how Promation supports your clients in the nuclear and isotope supply chain?
Sure, and thank you very much for having me. And good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be participating on this panel. I'll give you a little bit of background on Promation. Its roots were in automotive automation, and since the 30 years when it was founded as a Canadian company, we've since pivoted more towards a radiopharma space. So half of our focus is on supporting our nuclear facilities, similar to what Majid was saying. But half of our work now is to support the quickly growing radiopharmaceutical industry, both in Canada, primarily in Canada, and also around the world. Our advantage is that we're a small, medium-sized enterprise, so we are very responsive and nimble, are innovative, and are keen to collaborate with our customers and with other suppliers and vendors to ensure customer success. We provide full medical isotope life cycle support, everything from working with irradiation source companies, target delivery to formulation dispensing, right through to the clinical administration of medical isotopes, and then recovery of isotope products and recycling. Promation is currently working with some of the most leading radiopharmaceutical companies in Canada and also abroad in US and in Europe, both designing, building, and installing automated equipment and hot cells. And we are the automation integrator of choice in Canada for in-hot cell bespoke automation solutions. We're currently manufacturing also our very first shielded isolator for a CDMO in Hamilton, and that's with federal government support funding to create a shielded isolator that's made in Canada. And as well, we've recently been approved for 2 more funds for other medical isotope projects that are underway. So really, our big advantage is that because of our size, we can respond very quickly, support the industry to scaling up commercial production of medical isotopes, which, as you know, is ramping up very, very quickly.
Thanks so much, Alex, for that great overview. Sheila, I'll come to you next. So unlike Majid and Alex, your organization is not necessarily primarily focused on automation solutions, yet this technology is no doubt playing an increasing role in how Mirion supports its clients. Could you provide a bit of an overview of how these advancements are shaping your work?
Sure, Evan, thanks. And yeah, it's a real pleasure to represent Mirion, in this panel of these other distinguished panel members and all the folks who've joined us today. So, many of you are going to know Mirion, as a company, but you likely in this space will know Mirion through our acquisitions. And we're really a house of brands, but what centers us is our expertise in ionizing radiation. And so our two groups are really focused on the cancer care segment, which is related to what we'll talk about today, but also on nuclear and safety. But what ties us together at Mirroring in the product offerings and the acquisitions that we make, front and center in that is that the expertise that we have in and around the measurement and management of ionizing radiation in these different end markets. And also what stitches that together for Mirion is many of these regulations, whether it's on the nuclear medicine side of the supply chain, all the way from the isotope producer to the clinic, is that those are very similar in nature of protecting people, property, and the environment from radiation. And so those brands that likely you would recognize, our attendees to this panel discussion today, would be brands like EC Squared Software Solutions, which was a recent acquisition we made, which manufactures really, end-to-end software solutions from the isotope producers and CMOs and nuclear pharmacies to meet that regulatory demand and have good and ensure that they're meeting good CGMP practices, as well as at the clinic to ensure safe dose administration and accuracy to that dose administration. Anchoring all of that are recent acquisitions over the last 5 years that we made on the hardware side. So you'll recognize the brands of Capintech and Biodex, and then an earlier one 10 years ago was Canberra, which makes a lot of laboratory devices. So if you look at those house of brands, as we call them, had leading positions in these end markets. But when you bring them together to offer that comprehensive both instrument, but also on the workflow manage of that with EC Squared software. What we're excited about in this segment is what more can we do to streamline it. We know there's supply chain challenges today across. We hear it from all customers, from drug owners all the way to the hospitals. But how can we solve that? And we think we're ideally positioned with current products, but more importantly, to optimize it. And we've gone in a big investment to do this and to help solve some of the more challenging supply chain problems that we see exist today.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Sheila. And Chantal, I'll come to you with the same question. Can you provide a bit of an overview of how technological advancements are shaping the work that Sage Engineering leads?
Thanks for having us. I'll start quickly with an intro of Sage. We are an engineering consulting firm that provides services to clients in the regulated industries. We did celebrate 25 years in business last year, so we're not exactly the new kids on the block anymore. We have been working in the radiopharmaceutical industry for over 8 years, so we do have a wealth of knowledge in that area. And our services generally span across multiple areas, including equipment engineering, quality compliance and validation, project management, and facility engineering. We do work with our clients to develop and implement solutions to the industrial challenges that they're facing in the world today. So more specifically on your question, recently we've been supporting a lot of radiopharmaceutical clients really in their commercialization and scale up journeys. What that ends up meaning is an increased reliance on automation to meet greater throughput requirements. Where we kind of fit into that process is by supporting them to identify equipment trains for that increased throughput, supporting to build out user requirement specifications based on our knowledge in the industry and with the equipment that is commercially available out there, and narrowing in on the specific requirements for each client and their specific purpose. We do support technical evaluations of multiple equipment options. We do have existing relationships with many of the vendors in the market today. So all of these other panelists, all of these names that we've talked about, all of those brands are familiar to us. And then we are constantly evaluating these technical advancements to see what is available and how that might fit our clients' needs.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Chantal. I'm going to loop back to Majid and Alex for this one to kind of kick us off in the discussion portion. Obviously, I think you both mentioned within your first answers there that global demand for isotope is continuing to grow. What role do you see automation and technology playing in ensuring that we can scale the existing capacity we have without increasing risk and production costs? So maybe I'll go to Majid first.
Yeah, so I think, in terms of our expertise in nuclear stems from reducing dose exposure to workers. So that's not a foreign thing for us to do. Looking at the refurbishment projects and what we've been able to achieve with automation, it allows us to do, dangerous operations in a very safe and cost-effective manner. Our systems and solutions, they'll require human oversight, and the design processes that we undertake make sure that we consider things like failure modes, contingency operations, the maintenance, the reliability, and any other factors associated with installation, commissioning, operations, decommissioning. So all of the things come together during the design process and through understanding the requirements, like Chantal mentioned, in terms of what the customer needs and what are some of the design requirements, what are some of the things that we need to work with, and we make sure that we put all the the controls in place to allow for that to happen.
Excellent. I'll pass it over to you, Alex, for the same question.
Yeah, so when we talked about scaling up production, and I think just to take a step back, it's the scale up is critical right now because of so many radioisotopes that are entering the commercial space from clinical trials. And the only way that we'll be able to get to larger volumes and scaling up is through automation. So currently, most of although they are radioactive work environments, as far as protecting the worker, generally there's equipment currently that is robust to protect workers, but to be able to scale up so that both volumes and cycle times are reduced, volumes are increased, automation will be absolutely critical. And so for that, we've already been working for the last decade in building bespoke automated systems in hot cells to be able to speed up the operations of production for higher volume productions. And I think that's where automation will be absolutely critical. Clearly, we're also very conscious of worker safety. Working in a radioactive environment, we have in our history, Formation has built equipment that is operated inside reactor cores in very high radiation environments. So we're very adept at that. And also wanted to point out that what our strength in bringing to the radiopharmaceutical industry is a very strong nuclear-based QA and quality control program, which is something that has been traditionally lacking in traditional pharmaceutical automation companies or even radiopharmaceutical automation companies. So that gives us a distinct advantage in the industry to be able to provide solutions, automated solutions to customers that are looking to scale up production. So everything, again, in the entire life cycle from target delivery. For example, we are involved from irradiation source, looking at new high energy neutron sources, target delivery, for example, target delivery system IPS at Bruce Power. We are integral in designing, developing that, right through to radio chemistry, formulation, dispensing, target delivery, dose delivery to hospitals, and then recovery and recycling of medical isotopes so that they can be then re-irradiated and dispensed again.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Alex. Sheila or Chantal, do you want to jump in on that as well?
I think Miriam is a great maybe segue to what Alex was saying, because, maybe I'll transition away from this sort of physical automation and all the shielding and all that you do, from a structural standpoint to protect the worker. Well, we're sort of the check to that, right? We're to check that your processes are working and that your shielding is doing what it's supposed to do, because we make all of the dosimetry, worker dosimetry programs. And so what are we doing specifically for that? A few years ago, we introduced a new dosimeter that sort of broke some challenges that you have with managing dose to radiation workers, whether it's in a pharmacy or whether it's in a very controlled operating power plant. What was available on the market were passive doses where you don't, passive dosimeter. So you don't really know, unless you're wearing an electronic dosimeter that's job specific, if that worker is getting, dose above allowable limits. But with the InstaDose View product that we just released, it is what we call a hybrid, where it gives the user or the RSO of that facility that's managing these radiation workers, it gives them a real-time view of what their accumulated dose is. So that's just one technology advancement that we're looking, not just for nuclear medicine and not specifically for radiopharmacies where the risk is high. If your processes aren't good and your shielding, is not managing, the InstaDose View is ideal for that type of setting because you're not waiting for 3 months to see, or a month, whatever your schedule is, of sending those back and getting those doses reading. But maybe more recently is we've launched a product called Vital Supervision. And basically, it's a real-time alarm and event management ecosystem where any device that's going to be measuring any radiation and even to the worker in any facility is managed in real time. So you set thresholds and alarms that meet your operating requirements. So instead of having these bespoke, disparate systems and data not aggregated, we've built this ecosystem of Vital Supervision, and it's the first application. In fact, Vital is that ecosystem that we intend to expand on, even for this end market in nuclear medicine today. So those are just two examples where we have advancements in technology that meet, we think, the needs of this emerging and growing market to help it scale. Because let's be clear, the regulatory burden doesn't go away. And as you scale, it probably gets larger. And so what can we do to remove and ease that through what we offer in our technologies? And that's really our focus here, is how do we do that? And then the next step in that future for us is working with everyone in the supply chain to say, how do we help you optimize now that we have this digital ecosystem where we can aggregate data? What insights can we give you to this operation? And so I think it's a nice compliment, Alex, to your offerings to this end market.
Thanks so much, Sheila. That's so fascinating to hear about some of the recent additions to Miriam's lineup. I'll pass it over to Chantel if you'd like to dive in a little bit to how it helps scale capacity.
Yeah, just to add on to what the other panelists said, Alex mentioned that the path to greater capacity and throughput is automation, and we absolutely agree with that. But also, as Sheila was expanding, we do currently in the industry have measures for safety that work, that we can monitor, that we know function. So what we're currently seeing is actually more the question of when to automate and identifying through a risk-based approach which operations make more sense to automate versus more complex operations might just be better suited at this stage to human, being performed by a human. So what we think is going to have to be the balancing act is to really balance those positives of automation against the complexity of the individual tasks, as well as the capital cost of this specialized equipment. Something that's currently available might make more sense as the industry is growing versus the newest cutting edge technology, because we have those other safety options and monitoring programs and devices that can ensure safety without blowing through your entire capital budget for the year just to implement some new equipment. The other aspect is we need to consider physical space available. We don't always have, endless footprints to fill with equipment. And often, especially based on the complexity of the task, a more manual approach might be able to be done in a smaller space while using monitoring devices and the existing protections to keep the workers safe. So it's really just that balancing act of when do we kind of pass that threshold into automation?
That's so fascinating. Thanks for sharing a bit of the behind the scenes there. Yeah, Alex, I could see you jotting some notes down, so I'm very happy to pass it over.
Yeah, Chantal, it was an excellent point. We see that quite often, that number one, you point out space availability, and you wouldn't think that's a concern, but even for new producers, they often sort of pigeonhole themselves into a smaller space, and you have to look at what is the optimal solution. And often the customer will have in their minds what they think they would like to automate, but that's not necessarily the optimal solution, either from a complexity, cost, and some of our operations are best left to be manual. So absolutely, we do that quite often, and we also look at already commercial solutions that are available and adapting them. So we quite often will look at solutions that are from the pharmaceutical industry or from the automotive automation industry. Also, I wanted to point out that we have recently teamed up with Rockwell Automation, which is a large global automation company, and we are jointly developing an automation platform to help integrate automation into the radiopharmaceutical space. So that will allow more cost-effective solutions, solutions that are fully integrated, and solutions that are we look at holistically right from the beginning. So often we'll look at what's the ideal long-term automation plan, and then break it up in phases of leaving some of the steps manual, automating the sort of low-hanging fruit, the ones that where we can really get a benefit quickly, but allowing for space and provisions in the overall design to be able to integrate automation as their product scales up.
Thanks so much, Alex. Before we jump into the next question, I just want to remind our attendees that we will be getting into Q&As at the end of the event. I see some questions coming in already, but please make sure you use the Q&A function to submit them so I can ask your excellent questions to our panelists. I'll come to Majid for the next question. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement surrounding the increased role of automation and technology across sectors, but particularly in the isotope sector in this case. But I feel like there's also a bit of concern or uncertainty. What will it mean for jobs, de-skilling? So how, in your view, can we kind of balance these factors to ensure those concerns are addressed while also applying automation solutions when necessary?
Yeah, and I think that there's always going to be that sort of the question around the workforce and what it means. But I don't think I necessarily share that position. I think automation and technology allows us to do more, and if anything, it's not de-skilling. I think we're upskilling in a lot of different areas, right? So look at what we're doing on refurbishment projects, taking trades and workers from a really dangerous or more field type roles into more remote operated behind the desk computer-based type roles. So I think on the margin overall, it's a net positive for us to be able to introduce a lot of the automation and technology. I think we are able to transfer workers from one task to another. They can focus on more value-added type work, and by automating sort of the manual repetitive processes or some of the dose-intensive processes that they may be exposed to. So it's really around, in my mind, upskilling and sort of transferring workers from one task to another.
Excellent, thank you. I see Sheila nodding along this, so maybe you'd like to jump in on this question, Sheila.
I mean, I think I'm aligned with Majid on this. I think, we put a lot of focus on, are we going to have supply of these new emerging isotopes that are showing great promise to, possibly cure cancer in some cases. And if you look at lutetium-177 and actinium-225, a lot of focus gets put on, do we have the right supply? Now, Canada's in a great position, right? For both of those emerging isotopes that will do, we hope, great things in this cancer care. But also, what we see, because we see both sides on the we would call it the nuclear medicine side or the radiopharmaceutical side, as well as the nuke and safety, is a shortage of expertise. And so from our perspective, when we look about whether it's, radiopharmacy specialists that are needed, whether it's radiation protection specialists that are needed, and those folks that support that entire supply chain. So I don't see us ever in a position in this market of saying we're putting people out of jobs. It's going to be, are we making them more valuable? Are we taking the are we solving the supply chain issue with resources, technical ones, by letting them focus on the things that really matter from their operations instead of focusing on a lot of the manual, repetitive tasks when it comes to managing the regulatory burden that's put on this industry. So I see it more as, solving a problem than creating a job loss problem.
Thanks so much for that, Sheila. Chantal, I'll let you jump in on that one as well if you'd like.
Yeah, just to echo what Majid said, we do see it more as upskilling than deskilling. I think one of the points worth pointing out is that the people best suited to support the automated functions are going to be the people that had intimate knowledge of that operation to begin with. So your existing workforce, it's a matter of training them to perform that operation with the equipment versus removing, that workforce altogether. Just separately on the education and expertise point that Sheila made, we have also experienced that, that gap. And ultimately what we've done as a company is we have built up internally L&D programs to train people on radiopharmaceuticals, on radiation safety, on things like that, because it's not something that just exists, floating out there in the industry. So I do think there is absolutely opportunities to train people and to build these skills versus reducing the overall workforce.
Thanks so much. That's so fascinating. Alex, I'll let you jump in there as well.
Yeah, so no surprise, I'm in full agreement, and certainly automation in the radiopharmaceutical space is entirely different from automation in many other industries that are well established, because we're right at the crux of the radiopharmaceutical industry growing exponentially, and there isn't really even a choice of whether it can be scaled up using manual operations because of the time critical or time sensitivity of the product and half-life of medical isotopes, as well as the biological and radioactive protection concerns for producing. So I agree that it's a upskilling of the workforce. And there is already limitations on the currently available workforce. So I think the workforce itself will grow quite rapidly in parallel, side by side with automated processes. Also similar to what Chantal pointed out, which is important. I think it's important for the industry to look at, is to be able to build up a sort of a knowledge base and knowledgeable workers in the radiopharmaceutical space. That's certainly lacking, and that's something that we've also undertaken out of necessity at Promation. So we have produced internally training videos, for example, to get new hires up to speed. We bring in vendors so that they work with our engineering team to tell them more about sort of the latest developments in technology and products, so that our designers, engineers, and technical workforce are up to speed and know state of the art.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Alex. I'll maybe pose the next question just broadly to the panel, and whoever's interested can jump in. Maybe for some this is the dreaded question, but we kind of have to touch on it, at least briefly. We really can't discuss automation and technology in 2026 without discussing AI. There's a lot of hype, obviously, surrounding AI and what its integration means in our society. I presume that the isotope sector will not be immune to that. So wondering if any of the panel members have some perspectives on where we may actually see real value, but also near-term value for AI within the isotope sector. And Alex wants to jump in right away, so go ahead.
So we very actively at Promation been looking at AI, how it can help many of our internal processes, everything from using it, on the QA side. Really, at this point, it's to help support many of the administrative roles that are time consuming. There are specific areas, but we are obviously very careful as well, coming from the nuclear industry, which is always a little bit cautious in adopting new technologies. But there are areas, for example, in vision, where and inspection, where AI is already being adopted, and that's something that we're doing quite regularly. And also for documentation, quality audits, many of the administrative roles where we're starting to put in place. And in fact, we've recently hired an AI expert that's going to be leading that initiative within Promation. So we are leaping forward with cautious steps.
Excellent. Maybe I'll pass it to Chantal next to give a bit of an overview, but we'll go to the whole panel.
Yeah, thank you. So we don't see it as hype. We do see it as here to stay, and it's something that we do need to integrate into our ways of working. We really see it as an opportunity to give back time to the people by allowing AI to automate the tasks that have been tedious and time consuming. Obviously, this requires a great degree of oversight by humans. We are not at a point where you can blindly trust, anything that comes out of one of those models. Alex did mention visual inspection, and that is one of the use cases in the more regulated side of the business that is being explored for application of AI. We do have quite a large strand of our business in visual inspection. We do have a lot of clients that we are building programs for. We are actively exploring this as an option. The challenge is going to be in the more regulated side of the business to really ensure that we have a well-defined context of use for those models. The regulators have started to issue guidance, and they are touching on a few key points, including that context of use and risk assessment for what it means to be using the data generated by AI in a compliance vein. And then also how we're training those models to make sure that the data it gives us is appropriate data. And all of the regulators still are retaining that there has to be some level of human monitoring and control around these tools.
That's so fascinating. Thanks so much, Chantal. I, of course, knew that everyone on the call would be considering it, but it's really fascinating to hear how it's actually going. Alex, I'll come back to you right at the end, but I just want to give the other two a chance to jump in. So Sheila, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Evan. Yeah, so we're embracing it head on, but with caution, of course, because we are, in regulated markets. To Chantal's point, we've recently just hired a chief of AI. He's been with us a few months now, and the approach I think we're taking internally, everybody's trying to find efficiency, whether it's legal or HR or engineering. We're finding lots of use cases where we're finding great efficiencies, taking tasks that would take a human, 4 weeks to do, we're reducing it down to a day or even less, sometimes hours. And so, it's hard to encapsulate everything that we're doing internally, as most companies are, and those that aren't are probably going to be left behind from an efficiency standpoint and advancement. But I think the focus here maybe for the attendees of this panel is, how are we using it externally? And I think a simple way to look at it is, what's the use case? What's the problem? And then let's look to see if we have all of the elements to possibly solve that with AI. And so there's some exciting things going on now in the SMR space, the small modular reactor space, where, those companies are open to using AI, within a certain boundary and framework. So if we can model and have a digital twin of an operating nuclear power plant, if you take that, sort of parallel and say, in the world of radiopharmaceuticals and of, measuring dose to a patient and, assisting these drug owners and these folks that are developing these medicines, it's the laws of physics we're dealing with, and we're dealing with, things like attenuation of tissues in the human body. One would dream, and I would dream, that one day we could come to the point where maybe we start to model some of that. Well, maybe we start to decrease that time to market for some of these life-saving drugs. And so for me, I think we've just scratched the surface. If you think about how new this technology is, it's mind-blowing where we could take this. These models are getting better. So find good use cases, bring them to us or others, the panelists are on here, and let us see if we have all the elements that, an AI technology could solve that problem. And so that's how we're approaching it. It's like, let's find a problem. Let's see if AI and some tool can solve it.
Thanks, Sheila. Okay, over to you, Majid. What is the ATS take on AI in the
Yes.
industry?
So along the lines of what Sheila said, so there's obviously the things that we're doing internally at ATS to allow us to do things more efficiently through design, analysis, programming, all the tools that are there. But in terms of external facing, so ATS has a platform that we develop and actually have launched. It's called the Illuminate platform. So that one, Commissure, for example, right now is driving actionable integrated AI tools through that Illuminate platform. It's already deployed across the radiopharma and nuclear medicine production environments. And some of the strongest sort of values that Commissure bring in with AI in mind is real-time manufacturing intelligence, performance optimization, predictive maintenance of critical sort of radiopharma and isotope equipment. They're doing AI-driven monitoring, like Alex mentioned, in terms of video with integrated video for root cause analysis. They've introduced automated SPC and process anomaly detection. So really, it's about unifying, and producing a unified AI-enabled workflow across the production line. And I think between what Commissure does between the different groups within the ATS corporate and our digital sort of infrastructure that we have supporting all the ATS businesses, Commissure is in a really good position and is unique in terms of applying AI practically and measurably across the radiopharma segment.
Thank you, Majid. And Alex, we'll come back to you quickly before we move on.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also on the side of sort of caution that many of our customers now are coming to us and requesting that we have safeguards in place so that their commercially sensitive information isn't released out to the general public through AI searches and AI generated solutions. So despite those same customers using AI internally for sort of first draft of solutions, they're also very cautious about the release of commercially sensitive information. So I think that's a new take on it in comparison to nuclear, where we were very focused on cybersecurity. From the radiopharmaceutical space, there's sort of commercial sensitivity that is a concern.
Thanks so much, Alex. Definitely an interesting side to that as well. As always, this discussion time really flies by, so I want to kind of wrap up the discussion before we jump into Q&As with a bit of a forward-looking question, if we can go around the panel with it. So obviously at the CNIC, we talk a lot about the year 2030 because our Isotopes for Hope campaign is centered around a goal of doubling isotope production in Canada by 2030. So hypothetically, if we would revisit this conversation in 2030, what changes do you think we may see in the isotope supply chain as it stands today? What do you think success looks like for automation and technology within that supply chain? So I'll come back to Majid for that one first.
Yeah, so I think we're well on track to achieve that goal in Ontario with the work that we're doing and obviously the strong nuclear sector that we have. For me, success would be how we try to, what are we doing to replicate that across the different provinces in Canada? So, having plans, concrete plans to build out a nuclear sector in other provinces will help establish the isotope sector, in those provinces as well. I think right now we're leading the charge in Ontario. Obviously, BC with the cyclotrons and Triumph over there is also supporting it, but I think we can do more across the different provinces. And by doing that, it'll obviously build out the supply chain and the different companies that supporting it. So looking forward to seeing more of that.
Me too. Alex, go ahead.
From my personal perspective, what I would see as success at 2030 is that more Canadians have access to the radiopharmaceuticals that we are developing in Canada and we're producing in Canada, and to make them available both for the diagnostics and the radiopharmaceutical therapeutic side. Right now, Canada is, as you're probably aware, lagging behind many countries around the globe, yet we are one of the leading developers of the latest technologies in radiopharmaceuticals and also producers of medical isotopes and radiopharmaceuticals. As far as reaching target levels by 2030, I think we will far exceed that, and that will be driven primarily by global demand for radiopharmaceuticals. I think the surge and growth in the industry is going to be unprecedented. And if you look at the number of medical isotopes that are in phase 3 clinical trials right now on the brink of commercial production, there are very many, and there's only a handful of radiopharmaceuticals that are currently approved for commercial use. So I think by 23 there will be an explosion, and in parallel to that, I think there will be much more effective cancer treatments, and the shift will go to the therapeutic side, I believe, and we will see significant advancements in the cancer treatment, life-saving radiopharmaceuticals.
Thanks, Alex. Over to you, Sheila. What might automation technology look like in our supply chain in 2030?
Yeah, very specific for Mirion and Canada and other countries, right? Because we're a global company. We're looking to solve some of these supply chain issues with modernizing and optimizing the current solutions we have today. But to Alex's point, there are over 100 drugs right now, radiopharmaceuticals in some phase of a clinical trial. We know not all of those are going to make it. And so what we're focused on is, are there ways that we can help accelerate with the products that we have today within Mirion on that clinical trial phase? That takes a really long time. The other thing that I think, may or may not happen by 2030, which will have a really direct result on the demand for this is, can we get FDA and the regulators to come together with industry experts to not put nuclear medicine and theranostics in a tight box, right? Because if they do that and start applying measures that don't apply to theranostics, then the efficacy of those may not be what it could be. And I'm talking more about targeted doses for patients. I'm not sure we're there yet, and there's a lot of churn, as those of you probably know that are listening to the call right now. So for me, I hope that's not an impediment to the future and the success. I don't think it will be, but I think if we can get past some of that and get alignment in those regulatory bodies, it's not a dream to say that we could start to cure cancer. Lots of people who have cancer, and those of us have been impacted, by it in our personal lives. And so, just for Mirion, it's how do we take what we have today with our comprehensive instrument portfolio around radiation protection and regulatory management, helping drive efficient workflows, and how do we solve more of that, right? How do we give visibility to that supply chain? Because we look at it holistically. We're in from the isotope producers all the way through clinic administration. So we see that full picture. We have the EC squared ecosystem that we're heavily investing in, and we want to take that to the next level to hope, solve some of these both regulatory challenges as well as just logistical challenges for the world, basically.
Thank you, Sheila. And Chantal, last but not least.
Yeah, so we do see automation playing a big role in ultimately delivering these treatments to the end users. And more than just effective treatments, we do see radiopharmaceuticals as being more targeted treatments, which Sheila touched on a little bit. And ultimately, the hope is that this results as well in a greater quality of life for people undergoing treatment, right? We do see a digitization of records becoming a bigger aspect of the industry. And with that, obviously, is going to come some compliance requirements. So we think that overall the business is going to be more focused on how to validate those types of records. And included in that is the impact of AI. As more information becomes digital, there will be an easier case to use AI in regulated processes. But what comes with that is maintaining that compliance of that process. So I think that's going to be one of the big players as we progress toward 2030.
Excellent. Thank you, Chantal. We're going to move into Q&As now, so please feel free to submit your questions into the Q&A function, and our team will review them and publish them, and I will ask them to our wonderful panelists. Kicking things off, we have a bit of a hyper-specific question, which is okay. Whoever on the panel feels like they have an answer, feel free to jump in. So we have a question from Steve, who is a Canadian supplier of nuclear glove boxes and helium leak detection solutions. Wondering, seeking insights into where containment and leak integrity technologies are being used in the radiopharmaceutical sector. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
So since I have the backdrop of a shielded isolator, which is what we're currently building, and it's actually a glove box type shielded isolator, certainly the requirements for aseptic ISO 5 are to do leak testing and helium leak testing, as well as all the filtration requirements and laminar flow and shielding requirements. And ergonomics and all the other regulatory requirements that are faced to it. So yes, I think the short answer is absolutely there are leak requirements. Absolutely, it's probably the most critical aspect, and where many existing manufacturers of shielded isolators, glove boxes, struggle with is ensuring that the glove boxes are leak tight. And that's something that we are using OpEx from past decades to try to design a smarter, better shielded isolator, so that we face fewer issues when we're actually installing and commissioning these shielded isolators.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Maybe in the interest of time, we'll move on to another question we have in the Q&A here. And again, open to anyone on the panel. Are there any steps in the radiopharmaceutical manufacturing supply chain that are still quite hard to automate? And do the short half-lives of some medical isotopes impact this? Open to anyone? Yeah, go ahead, Majid.
And I think we touched on it during the discussion, right? I think the complexity of what we're dealing with, both in terms of the isotopes, the half-lives, the shielding requirements, again, because of our customers, our clients are driving that need to get isotopes out quicker, processed quicker. We're not allowing it for time for decay because we can't afford that time to decay. It means there's more complexity added to the hot cell in terms of shielding requirements. And you think about the manipulators, think about the characterizing equipment, like what Miriam provides, and all that. So definitely drives a lot of that complexity. And some customers are open to automation. Some customers are still resistant to automation because of the intricacies and what they're dealing with. And it's obviously a very valuable asset that you're handling. And if something was to break, if something was to get damaged, there's a large cost to it. And I think we touched on it, that not everything needs to be automated. It's not the solution to everything. I think Chantal mentioned a risk-based, risk-informed decision. But we still look at it and say, what tools, what fixtures, what jigs, how do you design your layout? How do you design or bring in certain equipment to help facilitate that quick processing without necessarily introducing robotics and automation into it?
Sure. I think Chantal had her hand up first, so I'll maybe pass it to Chantal and then Alex.
Yeah. Just a very quick note on that topic. I think that the question is not so much about difficulty in automation. I do think that solutions exist to perform most of the operations we're talking about, but the challenge really comes back to that return on investment is it worth automating? It's not that we can't do it, but it might be so complex that it might not be worth automating at this stage. It's more that balance. I think that's the challenge.
Thank you. And Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, and so to touch on both of those, so as far as the half-life of medical isotopes, I think that's exactly what's driving automation aside from the scale up. So I think automation is ideally suited for that. And I agree with Chantal that it's often return on investment, sort of the value that you get from it. Not only what's the cost of automating in dollars, but also what's the cost in automating in time to develop those systems. And because this industry is developing and growing so quickly, and in many for many isotopes, it's a bit of a commercial race. There's also time implications on developing automation solutions. So as I mentioned before, we often will propose a phased approach where we'll automate things that are give the highest return and can be implemented robustly and quickly, with an eye to automating sort of subsequent steps as well.
Thanks, Alex. Sheila, I will give you the last word if you would like it, but if you don't have anything to add on the question, that's okay too.
But, our product, offering compared to the, other companies and panelists represented here is a little bit different, right? We're not really in this automation space. What we see from a technological challenge, though, is in the logistics of shipping it. Yes, we're dealing with half-life. And what we see are some of these new isotopes coming on, depending on how they're produced, can have some impurities in it that are really, really hard to detect. And so we look at it and say, okay, how can we, using our what we think are leading, for example, gamma spectroscopy solutions, to identify radionuclidic purity, so that we don't slow down that process. Because if you have, for example, carrier added lutetium-177, there's an extra step in that production that, whether you automate it or not, you're going to have to determine what that impurity is, and ensure that, you're allowing that time for it to decay or remove it. That's complex, right? And so for us, we see more, how do we, for those situations, how do we, apply, our advanced, spectroscopy capabilities to that? And then lastly, because we sit between the clinic and the pharmacy with our EC Squared software solutions, whether it's NMIS or BioRex or some OLO online ordering solution that you have from us. But it's the visibility from a technology standpoint of that clinic needing to know when that dose is going to be there because of the half-life. And when it gets there, will it be at the, the activity and the intensity it's going to need, to treat. And so that's an area we're working on now with a lot of our partners, because they need it. And I see that as, one step in optimizing this supply chain. If we can think about things that make sense to automate in the production side, we don't want, to lose a dose in transit and shipment. And what can we do in our, EC Squared ecosystem to solve for that? It's a little bit different play on automation.
Thanks so much, Sheila. That's great. And just in the nick of time, first of all, I want to thank all of our wonderful panelists for joining us today. I think this was a really great discussion, and I hope that all the attendees here enjoyed the discussion as well. Before we log off, I want to remind everyone here, all those who have still joined us, about some exciting opportunities we have to get involved with the CNIC in the coming months, and there are many. So first of all, this is the webinar that you're currently at. There we go. So this is our big one of the year. The Canadian Radiotheranostics Leader Summit 2026 will be returning to Toronto on May 25th and 26th. And I'm happy to announce that you're all invited. Registration is now open. You can scan that QR code there, and that will take you right to the Leader Summit website with all the information that you need. We hope you'll join us. It's a great event. About 500 people this year, brings together the entire isotope supply chain and the academics and the clinicians who are using isotopes. So it's really one of those do not miss it events, in my humble view. Next up, another opportunity to engage. Obviously, we talk a lot about the workforce, and we're trying to do our part to engage young people and try to get them involved in the industry. So we'll be heading down to Oshawa in March to co-host an event with OCNI and the Brilliant Energy Institute at Ontario Tech, an industry night. So we're inviting folks to come out, grab a booth, showcase the work that you do within the isotope supply chain and nuclear supply chain in Canada. So we encourage you to join that if you're interested in engaging with some of the young folks who may be interested in getting involved in the sector. Next up, we just launched, I think it was yesterday or the day before, our 2026 member package, Join the Network, Shape the Future. So if you're interested in joining the CNIC network, this is your resource, has all the information about how to become a member. But if you're already a member, this has a bunch of information about our plans for 2026 and how you can get more involved with them. Speaking of CNIC members, I have a few member-only things to announce as well. So if you're not currently a member, you should read this membership package and come on board. We've launched a research and development working group in 2026. It's a new addition to our fleet of working groups, if you will. So we encourage all of our members who are interested in research and development to join us in that working group. And last but not least, our all members meeting will be on the 24th of March. Members should already have the information for that member meeting. If you do not, please connect with a member of the team and we will send you the link. And with that, right at 12 o'clock, we are wrapping things up. Thank you all for joining us again. We really appreciate your time, and we will see you at the next CNIC webinar.